What if I told you that the single greatest act of mass killing in all of human history is not what you think it is? Not the Holocaust, not the World Wars, not the Black Plague. It was carried out by one man, on horseback, across the largest contiguous empire ever built on the face of this earth. And somehow, across centuries of history books, university lectures, and Hollywood films, the world decided to call him a conqueror, a visionary, in some corners, even a hero. His name was Genghis Khan, and the story of what he actually did, the full unfiltered truth of it, is something that most classrooms, most documentaries, and most people have never truly reckoned with. Today we are going to travel across the burning steppes of Central Asia, through the ruins of the greatest cities the medieval world had ever built, and into the silence that followed one of history's most catastrophic and most forgotten atrocities. This is not just the story of an empire. It is the story of how the world learned to celebrate power while ignoring the price paid by those who stood in its way. So sit back, because what you are about to discover will permanently change how you see one of history's most recognizable names. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us which other forgotten atrocities you want us to investigate. Let's dive in. Historians of mystery, imagine a world before Genghis Khan. A world where the Islamic Golden Age was producing the greatest scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers on Earth. Where Baghdad was the most advanced city in human civilization, its libraries holding more knowledge than anywhere else in the known world. Where Persia was a cradle of poetry, medicine, and art. Where China's Song dynasty was producing innovations that would not reach Europe for another 3 centuries. It was a world of extraordinary human achievement. And then the horizon darkened, and everything changed. To understand what the Mongols did to that world, we must first understand where they came from. Because the Mongols did not begin as an empire. They began as scattered, feuding nomadic tribes on the vast Eurasian steppe, a sea of grass stretching thousands of miles across what is now Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and southern Russia. Life on the steppe was brutal and unforgiving. Harsh winters, scarce resources, and constant intertribal warfare meant that survival depended entirely on strength, speed, and ruthlessness. There were no cities, no written language, no central authority, just clans fighting other clans for horses, livestock, and survival. Into that world, around 1162 AD, a boy was born whose name would eventually become the most feared word in a dozen languages. His birth name was Temujin. And his early life read not like the origin story of a conqueror, but like a testament to suffering. His father was poisoned by a rival tribe when Temujin was 9 years old. His family was abandoned by their clan and left to starve on the steppe. He was captured and enslaved as a teenager. His wife was kidnapped shortly after their marriage. Every institution that should have protected him failed. Every person who should have stood beside him abandoned him. And from that crucible of betrayal and survival, something hardened inside Temujin that the world was not ready for. Not rage. Something colder. Something more strategic. The absolute unbreakable determination to never be powerless again. By 1206, through 2 decades of warfare, alliance building, and extraordinary military innovation, Temujin had done what no one before him had managed. He had unified every Mongol tribe under a single banner. At a great assembly of tribal leaders, he was proclaimed Genghis Khan, universal ruler. And from that moment, the world began to end for millions of people who had never heard his name. What made the Mongol war machine so devastating was not simply its brutality. It was its sophistication. Genghis Khan built the most advanced military system the medieval world had ever seen. His armies moved at speeds that seemed impossible to enemies accustomed to slow-moving medieval forces. While European armies moved perhaps 15 miles a day, Mongol cavalry could cover 60 or more. They carried no supply wagons. They lived off the land and off their horses. They communicated across vast distances using a relay messenger system so efficient it would not be matched until the invention of the telegraph. And their tactics were centuries ahead of their time. Feigned retreats that drew enemies into prepared killing grounds. Psychological warfare that broke cities before a single arrow was fired. Offers of peaceful surrender followed by absolute annihilation for any who refused. But here is the part that history tends to soften. Because the Mongol military strategy was built on something beyond tactics. It was built on terror as policy. Genghis Khan understood, with brutal clarity, that the most efficient way to conquer a continent was to make resistance seem more terrifying than surrender. And so cities that opened their gates were often spared. Cities that resisted were not merely defeated. They were erased. Their populations were massacred, their buildings torn down, their irrigation systems destroyed, their libraries burned. The message was deliberate and precise. Resist, and everything you have ever built will cease to exist. The city of Zhongdu, capital of the Jin dynasty in northern China, fell in 1215. Contemporary accounts describe the roads outside the city whitened with human bones for miles in every direction. The campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire, which stretched across modern-day Iran, Afghanistan, and Central Asia, resulted in the destruction of cities that had stood for 1,000 years. Samarkand, one of the jewels of the Islamic world, was systematically dismantled. Nishapur was razed so completely that Genghis Khan's daughter, avenging her husband's death there, reportedly ordered that not even the cats and dogs be left alive. And these were not isolated incidents. This was the system. This was the plan. But the single most catastrophic moment in the entire Mongol conquest, the wound from which an entire civilization never fully recovered, came not under Genghis Khan himself, but under his grandson Hulagu Khan. In February of 1258, Mongol forces arrived at the gates of Baghdad. At that moment, Baghdad was the undisputed capital of human knowledge. The Abbasid Caliphate had ruled there for 5 centuries. The House of Wisdom, the greatest library and center of learning in the medieval world, held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts covering mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and science. It was the beating intellectual heart of an entire civilization. The Caliph, Al-Mustasim, refused to surrender. It was the last decision he ever made. What followed over the next 2 weeks has been described by historians as one of the most devastating cultural catastrophes in human history. The Mongols killed somewhere between 200,000 and 800,000 people. The streets ran with blood. The canals ran black with the ink of destroyed manuscripts and red with the blood of scholars who had spent their lives filling them. Centuries of accumulated human knowledge were thrown into the Tigris River. The water reportedly ran dark for days. The House of Wisdom was burned. The Caliph himself was executed. And the Islamic Golden Age, that extraordinary flowering of human intellect that had been advancing science and philosophy for 5 centuries, effectively ended. In 2 weeks, because one man decided the world needed to know what resistance cost. And now we arrive at the number that defines the true scale of what the Mongol conquests meant for humanity. 40 million people. That is the conservative scholarly estimate for the total death toll of the Mongol conquests across the 13th and 14th centuries. Some historians put the figure closer to 60 million. To understand what that means, consider this. The total world population at the time was estimated at around 400 million people. The Mongol conquests, through direct killing, famine, and the destruction of agricultural infrastructure, are estimated to have reduced the world's total population by somewhere between 10 and 17%. In the regions most affected, the devastation was even more extreme. Iran lost an estimated 3/4 of its population. Iraq, once the most densely populated region in the Middle East, was reduced to a fraction of what it had been and would not recover its pre-Mongol population levels for 600 years. Central Asia, the cradle of the Silk Road, was transformed from a network of thriving cities into a landscape of ruins and emptiness. So why does no one talk about it? Why does Genghis Khan appear on currency, on vodka bottles, on the national flag of Mongolia, celebrated as a founding hero, while the names of his victims remain largely unknown? Why does the Holocaust command global remembrance, as it absolutely should, while the destruction of Baghdad and the death of 60 million people across Asia remains a footnote in most Western history curricula? The answer is uncomfortable. Because history is written by those who survive and by those who eventually hold the power to tell the story. The civilizations that the Mongols destroyed most completely, Persia, the Abbasid Caliphate, the Central Asian cities of the Silk Road, were not the civilizations that went on to dominate the modern world and write its history books. Europe, which the Mongols only partially penetrated before withdrawing, became the center of global power and the author of the historical narrative that most of the world inherited. And in that narrative, Genghis Khan was a fascinating conqueror, a military genius worthy of study and even admiration. His victims were statistics. That silence is not neutral. It is a choice. And it tells us something profound about how human beings decide which suffering deserves to be remembered and which suffering is allowed to fade. Every genocide, every atrocity, every act of mass violence in human history deserves to be counted, named, and carried forward in memory. Not because the past can be undone, but because the patterns do not change. The logic of terror as policy, of erasing those who resist, of building power on the silence of the destroyed, has never disappeared. It has only changed its flag. The Mongol Empire eventually fragmented, as all empires do. Its successors were absorbed into the cultures they had conquered. Some converted to Islam. Some adopted Chinese customs. The steppe nomads who had shattered the medieval world became, in time, part of it. But the world they left behind was irrevocably different. Cities that had taken centuries to build were gone. Knowledge that had taken generations to accumulate was ash. Populations that had sustained entire civilizations were dust. 40 million people. Say that number slowly. Because behind each one of those 40 million is a life, a family, a story, a future that never happened. A child who would have grown up to be a scholar in Baghdad. A farmer in Persia who had worked the same land as his grandfather. A merchant on the Silk Road who had never raised a sword in his life. They are not statistics. They were people, and they deserve, at the very minimum, to be remembered. Because history is not just the story of those who won. It is the story of everyone who lived, and everyone who was taken before their time. And if we only remember the conquerors, we are only telling half the story. The least important half. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this video and are passionate about this kind of content, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos and can discover more fascinating stories. See you in the next video.